Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are located on planet Earth. It is time for another edition of the PulseWave Report with yours truly, the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan, coming to you live from PulseWaveTrading.com, home of the world famous PulseWave price trigger reports that we make available to you each and every trading day, giving our PulseWave traders the edge in market trading. Doesn't matter if you're trading stocks, futures, forex, or cryptocurrencies. You can't do it without the PulseWave price trigger reports. Speaking of reports, we do have a few things we need to discuss this morning. There's a lot of things going around in the world. The first one is that a lot of triple OG players in the social media space have decided to start incrementally jumping ship from YouTube and seeking other platforms, whether it be their own websites or places like BitChute, to place their videos because of the overwhelming censorship and demonetization of YouTube. So I am noticing that trend, and it's starting to pick up. And I don't think that trend is going to be going away anytime soon, ladies and gentlemen. Not with the aggressive censorship that we have been witnessing in social media. So basically, this is what the markets are looking like this morning. You got the stock indices, all four of them, the Russell, NASDAQ, S&P, and Dow in the red. Those markets are starting to pull back this morning. And it's not a surprise. We came into the day. If you watched last night's end of day report, you know we had crash alerts on the Dow. We had crash alerts on the S&P, and we had crash alerts on the NASDAQ and crash alerts on the Russell. And the market is doing exactly what we anticipated that it would do and is now doing. So we're not surprised. This is exactly what we expected. So we're just watching things play out. It should also be noted that this morning gold is down $20. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Gold futures are now down more than $20. Silver is only down 26, make that 25 cents. Really struggling, trying to hold on to that $27 handle. Ladies and gentlemen, these are interesting times. It should be noted that silver futures has a crash alert on it that went out last night. And so silver is trying to decide, does it want to start pulse waving negative or not? Who's to say? I don't know. I just go by, what we pick up on the algo charts, and then we go with it. That's how we roll. We got our stop losses in, so we let the market develop. Give it room to work, give it room to move around a little bit, see what it do. Sometimes, these little movements only last a second, basically. They only last for the day, or not even, maybe just the morning, and then they reverse in the afternoon. Those are common. Then you have those only last a day or two, maybe three, and then it's over with. And that's one of the reasons, too, why the rally and crash alerts are predictive and sometimes ahead of the market 3 to 5 days out. Because nowadays, over the past almost 20 years now, the cycles that work in the market range between 3 to 5 days. That is your average, 3 to 5 days. That is your little micro trend. All right. That happens the majority of the time. Markets flipping back and forth. You'll be short for 3 to 5 days, then long for another 3 to 5 days, just flip-flopping around. And then when you get really lucky, you get these long-term, long-lasting trends that develop, and they can go on for weeks or months at a time. All right. And that's just what you do. You try to find the trend. You have no idea if it's gonna develop into something bigger or if it's going to be a 3 to 5 day. And so that's what you look for. You expect the 35, 3 to 5 days. You expect that 35. If you get lucky, you'll get that long-lasting developing trend, but you won't know that unless you're in it. Got to be in the market to win it. Got to be in it to win it. So that's what we're looking at this morning. We're looking at these declines. And as you know, the mighty futures composite index of the mighty Bitcoin is up $2,400 or 2,400 points this morning, hitting an overnight high of 52,280 on the futures composite index. So the market is doing what it do. We'll see how much smoke you can get out of it. But I got to keep it 100 with y'all. We did have a crash alert coming into today's trading for the mighty Bitcoin Futures Composite Index, which is not manifested. It did not manifest. There was no downside production. So no harm, no foul. But speaking of foul, let's turn our attention to what's going on in the world. I hate to be the one to say I told you so. I really hate that. I hate to be the one to say I told you so. You should have listened to me. But I'm going to say it this morning. Did you know that the National Guard is going to stay in D.C. through fall of 2021? Now you have to ask yourself a question. Why is that? Well, a leaked email suggests that there are plans to keep the National Guard in Washington, D.C. beyond the previously discussed deadline of March the 12th and throughout the summer and fall. A report by Fox 5 cites an internal email seen by reporters that reveals the National Security Council is asking the Department of Defense to engage Capitol Police on planning for post-March 12th support. Again, why is that? The report notes that there will be a meeting for agencies to discuss the matter next Wednesday, February the 17th, which is today. The email was written by Robert Salias, who is covering the duties of Assistant Secretary for Defense for Homeland Defense and Global Security. It states, if it's not possible to sustain at the current level with the National Guard personnel, we need to establish the number of National Guard personnel, the DCNG, out of state. We can sustain for an extended period, at least through the fall of 2021, and understand additional options for providing DoD support to include use of reserve personnel as well as active component. So you're talking about active duty and calling up the reserves. Now, while troops were expected to stay in D.C. for the duration of the impeachment sideshow, owing to security concerns, it now appears that they will remain even longer. The Pentagon has confirmed that there are still around 6,000, not 60, not 600, but 6,000 National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. While there have been indications that the number will be reduced to 5,000 within a month, there have been no other indications of when troops will be stood down. No stand down order given as of this moment. There's also no indication of when the huge razor wire top security fencing will be removed from around Capitol Hill. The Guard have been given virtually no information about what they are required to do, with one soldier previously describing the situation as very unusual for any military mission. As reported last month, thousands of troops were forced to sleep outside and in a parking garage near the Capitol building after a Democratic lawmaker complained that one guardsman was not wearing a face mask. The estimated cost of keeping the security measures is so far close to $500 million. Without a legitimate reason to keep troops in D.C. any longer, Americans can only assume that the Biden administration and the Democrats feel their grip on power needs protecting by a permanent military presence. So basically, D.C. is under martial law. Forget the Posse Comitatus Act. You now have active military engagements on American soil. Ladies and gentlemen, had anyone else done this, it would be a media circus. But so far, you're not hearing any talk about this whatsoever. They're pretending as if it doesn't even exist. What do they have to be afraid of? If they didn't do anything wrong, like steal an election, then why do they need the National Guard? No other president has done this, but the current administration is doing it. See, they know that people are very angry and getting angrier by the day. That's why they want to take your guns away from you, to disarm the people, which makes rebellion both less likely to occur and far easier to quell if it does. Yeah. Or is it that the new democratically controlled federal government is preparing to do things they know will upset people to the point of armed resistance? Could that be it? You see what I mean? And they talk about transparency and all these good things they want to do. They say one thing and they do the opposite. Perhaps I have the answer to why the National Guard has been called up and they have locked down the nation's capital and turned it into one giant prison. Is it because Kraft and Heinz and Conagra will start passing on soaring food costs to their customers? Is it because we're getting to a point now where there's going to be stagflation for the masses? So the government has to protect itself from the people. They fear the people rising up in protest. Is that it? Not only do you have 50 plus million people out of work, but now the cost of living is about to soar. And all the average American citizen can do is watch. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen. Keep a very close eye on whether we see a repeat of the 2010 or 2011 surge in food prices because of the 10th anniversary of the start of the Arab Spring, and with poverty having already been made much worse by the planned scamdemic. Another food price bubble could well be the straw to break the very angry camel's back. Now, while it's not quite the spring of 2021 just yet, there are indications that soaring food costs are about to get passed on to consumers. Kraft Heinz Company and Conagra Brands Inc. warned Tuesday that price increases of wheat, sugar, and other commodities are becoming more expensive due to elevated demand. Well, with that being said, wheat is down 13.5 points this morning, so go figure on that one. According to this report, this is going to be terrible news for the working poor who already suffer from housing and food insecurities. Now, Conagra executives told Reuters that increased prices for edible oils, pork and eggs, and packaging might force it to pass it along to consumers in the form of higher prices. Kraft Heinz CEO Miguel Patricio said inflation is everywhere in the agri-complex. Well, wait a minute, the Fed said there is no inflation. They're keeping inflation at about 2%. That's because they don't look at certain indices anymore. They don't look at food and they don't look at energy. Because they know if they did, it would blow up their talking points. He said inflation is in everything related to grains, and it's being observed, and it may result in price increases of some categories, including mac and cheese and mayonnaise, later this year. All right. Now, is it time to start worrying about food inflation, jacked up prices at the grocery store? According to Edwards, the answer is yes. In December CPI print, food inflation was very notable on January the 13th. The report said that the food at home index increased 3.9% over the past 12 months. All six major grocery store food group indexes increased over the period. The largest increase was the meats, poultry, fish, and eggs index, which rose 4.6%, so much for the Fed's 2% inflation, as the beef index increased 5.3%. The smallest increases were for the cereals and bakery products and the fruits and vegetables index, which both increased 3.2% over the last 12 months. Again, so much for the Fed's 2% threshold for inflation. The index for food away from home rose 3.9% over the past year. The index for limited service meals rose 6.0%, and the index for full service meals rose 3% over that span. Also, the Food and Agriculture Organization's food price index rose for a seventh consecutive month in December, led by dairy products and vegetable oils. You can't cook without oil. You don't need to be a genius to understand that one. Also, the Food and Agriculture Organization's food price index rose for a seventh consecutive month in December, led by dairy products and vegetable oils. So, as the surge in global food prices remains anything but transitory, major food producers are set to pass on those food costs to consumers at a time when millions of them can barely afford rent and or feed their families. Of course, while food prices are surging around the world, not just here in the United States, the well-managed signals of official inflation data remains relatively low, enabling central planners to keep the spigots wide open no matter what the consequences. While central bankers walk around with their heads in the clouds, a team at CR Research has surveyed more than 2,000 American consumers to find out how they have adjusted to these higher prices, which have come amid a surge in unemployment. Their findings aren't all that surprising. A whopping 85% of consumers said that their budgets had been impacted by having to pay more for groceries, such as milk and eggs and meat. Those are the top staples that Americans are paying more for. Ladies and gentlemen, this is getting ridiculous. And given the headlines today, things are about to get even worse. To sum it up, prepare for major food companies to start jacking up food prices. We assume this will not sit well in the stomachs of already broke consumers. So you have a choice to make. You can get the new PlayStation, or you can buy yourself some groceries. I think I know which option most people will pick. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're just scratching the surface this morning of what's really, really going on. And I think it's time that we need to dig a little bit deeper, ladies and gentlemen. We got to dig a little bit deeper. But you got to be careful when you're digging deeper, because you know what? When you now report news and talk about current events, that could land you in some pretty hot water nowadays. Yep. You may soon get labeled a domestic terrorist if you sway away just a little bit from the controlled narrative. Yeah, So that means if you're starting to feel like forces controlling the government of the West are out to get you, then it's likely that you're either a paranoid nut job or a stubborn realist. Either way, as far as they're concerned, you're a terrorist. You may have some major problems on your hands. If you don't happen to find yourself among the tinfoil hat wearing strata of conspiracy theorists waiting in a bunker for aliens to either strike down or save society from the shape-shifting lizard people, but are rather contemplating how in the 1960s a shadow government took control of society over the dead bodies of many assassinated patriots, then certain conclusions tend to arise, right? Let's break it down. The first conclusion you would likely arrive at is that the United States government was just put through the first coup in over 58 years. Yes, what happened in 1963 was a coup. Know your history. Although it is becoming a bit prohibitive to speak such words aloud in polite society, Nancy Pelosi's official biographer, Molly Ball, recently penned a scandalous Time magazine article entitled "The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Elections," which admitted to this conspiracy. They admitted it. Quote, "Even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream, a well-funded cabal of power people ranging across industries and ideologies, working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information, lest you think that this was a subversion of democracy." Ball informs us that they were not rigging the election, they were fortifying it. That is a direct quote. They are admitting it now. The only way and reason why you would admit something like that is because you know you have absolute power standing behind you and protecting you so nothing can happen to you. Another conclusion you might come to is that many of the political figures whom you believed were serving those who elected them into office actually serve the interests of a clique of technocrats and billionaires lusting over the deconstruction of Western civilization under something called a Great Reset, where this was brushed off as an unfounded conspiracy theory not long ago. Even Canada's deputy prime minister and neo-Nazi supporting Rhodes Scholar, Chrystia Freeland, decided to become a trustee of the World Economic Forum just weeks ago. In this role, Freeland joins fellow Oxford technocrat Mark Carney in their mutual endeavor to be a part of the new movement of decarbonize civilization and make feudalism cool again. That's right. They want you to accept their power over you. They want you to accept your peasantry. They want you to accept and enjoy your serfdom. Lastly, you might notice that your having arrived at these conclusions is itself increasingly becoming a form of thought crime, punishable in a variety of distasteful ways, elaborated by a series of unprecedented new emergency regulations that propose extending the definition of terrorism. Those implicated under the new definition will be those broad swaths of citizens of Western nations who don't agree with the operating beliefs of the ruling oligarchy. Already, a 60-day review of the U.S. military is underway to purge the armed forces of all such thought criminals, while McCarthyite legislation has been drafted to cleanse all government jobs of conspiracy theorists. Another startling announcement from the National Terrorism Advisory Bulletin that domestic terrorists include ideologically motivated violent extremists with objections to the exercise of governmental authority and perceived grievances fueled by false narratives. While not fully codified into law, though it will be, if not nipped in the bud soon, you can be sure that things are certainly moving fast before our very eyes. The right to free speech is being torn to shreds by means of censorship across social media and the internet, canceling all opinions deemed unacceptable to the ruling class. Yes, you're not dreaming. This is not a test. This is real. This should not come as a surprise to you. As Biden's new addition to the Department of Homeland Security is a bizarre figure named Cass Sunstein, who famously described exactly what this was going to look like in his infamous 2008 report titled Conspiracy Theories, co-authored with Harvard Law School Adrian Vimuel. In this underappreciated study, the duo foresaw the greatest threat to the ruling elite took the form of conspiracy theorizing within the American population, using as examples of this delusion the idea that the government had anything to do with the murders of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. or the planning and execution of 9/11, all of which have damning, overwhelming evidence to support that is exactly what happened. Just to be clear, conspiracy literally means two or more people acting together in accord with an agreed upon idea and intention. Taken to the court of law, it falls under the conspiracy. Same thing, conspiracy. You conspired with people. You conspired against. Now, the fact that Vermeil has made a legal career arguing that laws should be interpreted not by the intentions of lawgivers, but rather according to cost-benefit analysis, gives us a useful insight into the deranged mind of a technocrat and a delusional reasoning that denies the very thing which has shaped literally all of human history. In their scholarly essay, the authors wrote, quote, "The existence of both domestic and foreign conspiracy theories, we suggest, is no trivial matter, posing real risk to the government's authoritarian policies, whatever later may be." And that's an end quote. After establishing his case for the threat of conspiracy, Sunstein says that the best response consists in cognitive infiltration of extremist groups. Not one to simplify and draw criticisms, the proactive Sunstein laid out 5 possible strategies which the social engineers managing the population could deploy to diffuse the growing threat, saying that 1, government might ban conspiracy theorizing. 2, government might impose some kind of tax, financial or otherwise, on those who disseminate such theories. 3, government might itself engage in counter speech, marshaling arguments to discredit conspiracy theories. 4, government might formally hire credible private parties to engage in counter speech. And then 5, government might engage in informal communication with such parties, encouraging them to help. Let's just break this down for a minute, because again, this too is nothing new under the sun. To say that the government might ban conspiracy theory is basically saying they're going to do away with free speech. All right, because theories are streams of thought. As a matter of fact, the entire year of 2020, all of the global government's actions were based on flawed theories. But no one banned the government from using them. They still used them and stuck to them and even doubled down on them. Then they said the government might impose some kind of tax or financial or otherwise penalty on those who disseminate such theories. So they're going to be using the strategy of tyrants throughout millennia. And that was a tax. A tax is a powerful way to shut down your opposition and all of your dissenters. because you can tax them into oblivion. You can tax a business out of business. That's what they use in North Africa. That's how the Islamists got rid of, Christianity in their space, which was taxing the Christian church into oblivion to the part where it couldn't sustain itself anymore, and so it collapsed. Tax has always been a tactic. Always. A tactic of tyrants. It's what they do. Government might itself engage in counter speech, marshaling arguments to discredit conspiracy theories. That's something that they've been doing for decades already. That's not something new that they're going to start doing. They've already been doing it. You didn't know? You didn't know that the Department of Homeland Security has their own department of trolls whose job it is to infiltrate social media and groups and chat rooms and message boards? You didn't know that? Yeah, that's what they do. Or how about this one? Government might formally hire credible private parties to engage in counter speech. Again, that's what they do. That's what they've been doing. You parade a group of scientists or doctors or whatever, fill in the blank, to try to debunk the truth. Again, building walls around the truth so you can't get to it. And then when all else fails, what do? They make it so that you don't get to hear any counter arguments. There's no longer the public space of debate. There's no longer the marketplace of ideas. That marketplace has been permanently closed. It's been shut down. So just think about it. Just meditate just for a moment about which of these prescriptions were put into action over these past, let's say, 10 or 12 years. Cass Sunstein was particularly sensitive to this danger, largely because he was part of a very ugly conspiracy himself, and he is a world-renowned behaviorist. As an economic behaviorist and lawyer arguing that all human rights should be extended to animals, blurring the line separating human dynamics from the law of the jungle as any fascist must do, Sunstein has spent decades trying to model human behavior with computer simulations in an effort to scientifically manage such behavior. Central planning has been one of the key disasters in the last 100 years of human society. Central planning has always ended in ruin. Now, as outlined in his book Nudge, co-authored with Nobel Prize-winning behaviorist Richard Taylor, Sunstein discovered that people tend to organize their behavioral patterns around certain fundamental drives, such as the pursuit of pleasure, avoidance of pain, and certain Darwinian drives for sex, popularity, desire for conformity, desire for novelty, and greed. One of the key principles of economic behaviorism, which is seen repeated in such popular manuals as Freakonomics and Nudge and Predictability Irrational, The Wisdom of Crowds, and Animal Spirits, is that humans are both biologically determined due to their Darwinian impulses, but unlike other animals, have the fatal flaw of being fundamentally irrational at their core. Again, a bunch of psychobabble dribble. Since humans are fundamentally irrational, says the behaviorist, it is requisite that an enlightened elite impose order upon society while maintaining the illusion of freedom of choice from below. Again, saying that the enlightened elite have to control society, giving them the illusion of freedom of choice. So you have an illuminist, someone who is basically put it out there that they are part of the Illuminati, claiming that they're enlightened and you're not. They know better than you. So they have to control you and give you the illusion of freedom. This is the underlying assumption of Karl Popper's open society doctrine, which was fed to Popper's protege, George Soros, and which animates Soros's general theory of reflexivity and his Oxford-based Institute for Economic Thinking. This was at the heart of Obama's science czar, John Holdren's call for world government in his 1977 Eco-Science, co-written with his mentor, Paul Ehrlich. While the young misanthrope envisioned a future utopic world governed by a scientifically managed master class, saying that, quote, perhaps those agencies combined with UNEP and the United Nations population agencies might eventually be developed into a planetary regime, sort of an international super agency for population, resources, and environment. Such a comprehensive planetary regime could control the development, administration, conservation, and distribution of all natural resources, renewable or non-renewable, end quote. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a game. This is real. This is real. You can't escape that. That is a direct quote from something written in 1977. Let you know how long they have been working toward this end game. They wrote this. We didn't say this. They wrote this. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a conspiracy fact. The caveat: if Darwinian impulses mixed with irrational animal spirits were truly all that animated those systems which behaviors wish to map and manipulate, then a scientific priesthood would indeed be a viable and perhaps necessary way to organize the world. But fortunately, reality is a bit more elegant and dignified than behaviorists wish to admit. Now, on a closer inspection of history, we find countless instances where people shape their individual and group behavior around sets of ideas that transcend controlled material impulses. When this happens, those individuals or groups tend to resist adapting to environments created for them. This is the reason and purpose for locking down Washington, D.C., because they know the revolt to their tyranny is coming. And you know what could really push this over the edge? How about 3 million Texans without power as the grid chaos continues ahead of imminent ice storm? Let's just look at the facts as we know them so far. Our thoughts and prayers go out with our fellow man that live in Texas. Let's just look at some facts. Let's break it down. Encore Electric Delivery warns of additional outages. Even more outages. It doesn't matter if you got 3 million people out of power. You're talking about even more outages. How about fuel shortages developed in western half of Texas? How about power prices jump in Austin as evening sets in? How about Governor Greg Abbott calls for ERCOT leadership to resign? How about CenterPoint Energy warns power shortages could last several days? How about the power grid crisis spreading to Mexico? How about 15 more states have power outages due to extreme weather? How about Governor Greg Abbott requesting LNG exporter Freeport to limit gas intake? How about Governor Greg Abbott declaring ERCOT reform? How about 4.423 million customers in Texas without power, without electricity? Bloomberg's Javier Blas warns blackouts have spread again. General Motors idles Arlington Assembly Factory. Encore Electric Delivers warns of controlled outages across the state. Key words here, controlled outages. What did I tell you guys just a week ago? Huh? What did I tell you? Man-made shortages. Not something that happened organically. Not because a tree fell over on a power line or a pigeon pooped on the electrical line and caused it to short out. No. Controlled outages. A human being pushed a button and turned your lights out. All this happening while temperatures in Tyler, Texas are -3 degrees Fahrenheit on Tuesday morning. How about ERCOT hoping to restore power with more generators returning to grid? Or the Southwest Power Pool said blackouts to continue for the second day. Or the Houston Police Chief Art Avento tweets weather-related death. How about more data showing Arctic air to remain in Texas until the end of the week? Or how about ERCOT wholesale electricity prices topped $9 per megawatt hour overnight? Or how about rolling blackouts morph into down cellular networks? Or Texans preparing for second winter storm on top of what they're dealing with right now? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Encore Electric Delivery, Texas' largest transmission and electric distribution utility, warns customers to be prepared for additional outages and stay weather aware due to an active winter warning. Really? It's not bad enough that people living inside of their homes are literally freezing to death. Do you know it's 37 degrees in most of the homes in Texas right now? Just hovering above freezing inside your house. The cold snap in Texas has forced the shutdown of refineries, oil wells, and meat plants. So think about the disruption in shipments of soybeans and corn. And it's still leaving more than 3 million customers without electricity. And parts of Texas could remain in the dark for several days, according to Bloomberg. With more than 3 million customers without power, there is no way ERCOT will restore power tonight. It could be a couple of days before full power is restored. Bloomberg said also that fuel shortages are developing in the western half of the state. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the powers that be have some explaining to do. Big time. But didn't I just finish saying this just days ago, before this even happened? And isn't it also shocking to you that the whining trolls are blaming oil? They're blaming oil in all of this. When the fact is that the drain on the entire grid system from the green alternatives that put Texas in this situation to begin with, we have been saying this for years. If you start to take down a system before you can replace it, people will get hurt. Now that it is actually happening, the tree huggers are actually believe that Americans will believe their crap as if it were no such thing as severe storms in the past. They're so self-focused and self-consumed, they actually believe weather didn't exist before their lifetime. You didn't factor that into your calculations with your windmills and your solar panels, did you? We've had the worst weather in Texas in the past and never ran out of power. So why is Texas running out of power now? Answer: it's because of alternate sources of energy not ready for prime time usage, just like dying California. What you see in Texas is already happening in the dying state of California. But if you wear 2 masks, it will work even better. Of course, the science is pending on that one. Really? Well, just think about this for a minute. Okay? They want you to wear 2 masks. And if that wasn't ridiculous enough, the CDC now says that wearing pantyhose on your face along with wearing 2 face masks will help you. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The COVID recommendations from the brilliant science people at the CDC have turned to a comedic level, something you would see on Mad TV or Saturday Night Live. They've gone from 1 mask to 2 masks to 3 masks, and they're now suggesting that we wear pantyhose over our face masks. They want you to walk around here looking absolutely ridiculous. Ridiculous. Sure, ladies and gentlemen, I think the American public will definitely be sure to apply their pantyhose right before they step into the bank. That ought to be real safe, won't you think? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. But here's a fun fact for you. Here's a little fun factoid for you. All right? I don't understand the science of all of this stuff. I'm not even going to pretend to. But I do read. Okay? I do read. So I know that the scientists have already been talking about this and warning, but no one's been listening. You could never depend on alternative energy for 100% of your needs. The problem is that solar works fine under perfect conditions. But once the weather becomes challenging, neither solar power nor wind can be relied on. It was foolhardy for Texas utilities to depend on their wind power generation, particularly during winter months, without the massive investment in megalithic storage batteries that have been yet to be discovered. That's right, people. The Green New Deal will line the pockets of its donors and other connected people. In the end, the very people intended to be served will be cold, just like Texas residents are today. And at the end of the day, all hybrid car charging stations rely on fossil fuels, mainly coal, for their energy. There has been little appreciable progress made in green energies since Jimmy Carter's pipe dream. In fact, the panel technology used today in the present is the same as that used in 1974. So who are we trying to kid anyway with all this nonsense? Oh, the gullible American people, right? Because they believe anything. Really? Instead of abandoning fossil fuels and the rich energy reserves in the United States, investment must be made innovating them. And if the deep state could be vanquished, who knows? We may even recover Tesla's free energy discoveries. Current experiments and documents that cross-dresser Hoover and his FBI managed to seize right after the man died. You know, all those documents John Trump, Donald's uncle, and MIT physicists reviewed for the FBI attesting to their viability, never to have been seen from or heard from again. I believe Tesla's work has been suppressed to maintain petroleum magnates' control of the world's energy. That sucking sound you hear, ladies and gentlemen, is the progressive dream of a Green New Deal going down the toilet of reality. Deal with it. On a brighter note, at least Texas will be able to push up its COVID-19 84 death numbers. Maybe that will convince a few sheep to take the injection, thus saving the bankrupt snake oil farmer companies, right? Tell that to the 3 million folks who have been without steady power for the past week in sub-frigid conditions. More exercises and ridiculousness. Troops in razor wire around DC for the rest of the year, making it look like the Gaza Strip. The cost to probably exceed $1.5 billion or more. Mortgage and rent forbearance pushed to July the 1st, which will then be extended again another 6 months. Politicians no longer legislate, but play roles in a big old stage play. The American public is half insane over masks and a vaccine whose long-term effects are totally unknown. You don't even know the ingredients in it. The education system is collapsing. The game of musical chairs over middle-class jobs is down its last few contestants. Cops won't protect you. Your water and electricity will fail you in a time of crisis. And if you get pissed off about it, you're probably a domestic terrorist. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the world you have woken up to this morning. Basic elementary tasks of government. The only tasks of the government that really matter. The essential duties of the night watchman state aren't being performed at all. The government has been de facto shut down. Instead, the state uses its own failures to arrogate more power to itself and over you. Anarcho-tyranny is here, ladies and gentlemen. It has finally arrived. This is the world you've woken up to this morning. Are you feeling good about yourself now, right about now? Are you feeling good about your government that you voted into office? Remember, you voted for them. You, the American people, you voted for them. So, a question for you, clean energy advocates. What do you do when the wind turbines are all frozen? Huh? The wholesale price of electricity spikes 10,000% and a Texas power outage, among other problems. The wind turbines are all frozen. And guess what? You need a helicopter running on fossil fuel to spray chemicals made from fossil fuels onto a wind turbine made with fossil fuels during an ice storm. How scientifically awesome is that? You see, the clean energy nut jobs have finally been exposed. Come on. You don't make any sense. None at all. But the people are still voting for it. How ridiculous. How ridiculous. Ladies and gentlemen, you got to do the knowledge to this. You got to peep the science behind this. You got to wake up. You got to wake the heck up. But if not, oh well, just go ahead and stay asleep. Nothing to see here. The government will take care of you. Not. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what it is. Smash that like button. Come to PulseWaveTrading.com. You know what this is. You know you need them pulse waves. You know you need it. What you doing with your life? How you going to make money in the market without it? Remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So remember to take what you can and give nothing back. And I'm out. Smash that like button. Peace.